Okay, Jessa, please welcome Jessa over here.
All right, my time is until 11:30, so I'm gonna try to stick to that. My plan was to do kind of a hybrid of a chat about data recovery in your phone repair business and do a little bit of a demo where I brought a real live case here, the case for, I'll say, this was just on my desk when I left, case for somebody named Michael in Seattle, Washington, who needs data recovered from this iPhone 12 Pro that is dead as a doornail right up here. And we're gonna try to fix it either here in this talk, or if we run out of time, I'm just gonna take all this down to the iPadRehab booth in the exhibit hall, and you're welcome to join me maybe at the lunch break and we can kind of finish up there. So first thing I wanna do is find out what's up with you guys, what do you need, and what can we do here best with this time? How many of you guys are doing microsoldering? A lot of you guys. So you guys can leave because you already know everything that we're going to talk about today. So if you need to go hit up the Alamo, I did that this morning. Super cool. Nobody's there right now. So good time. How many of you guys are interested in maybe learning microsoldering? Okay, so this is kind of for you guys. This is a general audience talk that I made when I went to a digital forensics conference where Bill Acock, for example, that you talked to yesterday, he was one of my students for logic board repair and microsoldering, and he is in the digital forensics field. So there's a lot of opportunity, not just for repair, but also for helping out your local law enforcement. So one thing that you guys should do is go talk to those guys and make friends, so that when, it's very common, like you know, and from your experience we talked yesterday, oh, this phone's water damaged. You know, it's unrecoverable. That's what forensics guys, that's what they think down at your local police department, and they need your help. So go make friends over there. All right, so the first thing that I would say to you guys is when I notice with our microsoldering training students that people sometimes have a repair mindset instead of a data recovery mindset, and that's costing you a lot of money. So let me explain this sort of typical scenario. If somebody's got all of their memories on their phone and they think it's backed up, phone goes in the washing machine, and then they realize, oh, it's not backed up. Where's all my stuff? Oh my God, they're really freaked out. And they might go down to the Apple store and say, oh my God, I gotta get this stuff out of this phone. And the Apple store will say, that's too bad. Here's the new phone section. Right? So then they'll leave. And then their mind, the word that they're thinking is, I have to fix this phone. I need to or get a time machine. Right? So they come to you, and what they'll say to you is, can you fix my phone? And as a repair person, we think, oh yeah, fix phones, that's what we do, yeah. Oh, let me take a look, see what I can do. So if your mindset is that the job is fix this phone, you open it up, water damage, cameras are gone, the batteries, looks totally white and toasty, you can see green all in there. And it might be your instinct to say, man, this is not worth it. This guy should just buy a new phone, because even if I replace all the screen and the battery and the cameras, then it's probably going to have corrosion on the board, and I got to warranty that, and you know what? No, you should get a new phone, right? And you can change that deliverable by asking every person that comes in your shop, is there important data on this phone? And so if you lead with that, and that's what we do, hey, how are you doing? How can I help? Phone's broken. Is there important data on the phone? And a lot of times, your local walk-ins will say, oh yes, that's why I'm here, because, launch into a story about how important the data is. And a lot of times in that story, they'll say, I already have Apple Care on this phone, or I have insurance on this phone. I actually have I've already replaced this phone, it's in my pocket, so all I need is the data on this phone. And if we don't ask that question, then we don't realize that you can pretty easily convert that horrible repair job of that green corroded phone into maybe an even easier data recovery job, as long as you know the low-hanging fruit for data recovery. All right, so I want to have you guys think about that sort of data recovery mindset. Now let's go over a couple of that low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's easy for you guys to fix because you know about it when it walks in your door. All right, how to get data from phones that don't turn on. There's only one answer, no matter how much money you have, no matter if you work for Celebrate Premium or Great Key or the US government, you have to get that phone to turn on, and you have to enter that phone's passcode. That's always the case. So how do we get data from phones that don't turn on? We have to at least temporarily get them to boot with image and accept touch to enter the passcode and then maintain a USB connection. But that's it. All right, so here's the first thing that we're gonna do whenever anybody comes in with a phone and they said yes to that all-important data question. We are going to eliminate variables. So this is really huge. If somebody walks in with an iPhone 12 Pro, like this guy here, we have to have known good parts, which is not the same as new parts. It's proofed parts, parts that you know work. And especially with these modern phones, a lot of times the parts that are brand new, that are coming out of China, will have this charge port will charge, but it doesn't have a thermal sensor on it that's required for the phone to stay on, things like that. So in the forensics world, at least when I gave this talk, these guys don't realize that you can boot up a phone with just the logic board. Like you don't need the housing, right? All you need is a known good screen. You don't even need the backlight. See how you can pull that backlight away? Known good screen. You need a charge port, and you need a battery for most of these phones. To get them to stay on long enough, you may need to plug in a power flex or some additional parts. All right, so let's talk about some of this low-hanging fruit, very common problem. Everybody fixing phones has seen this walk in your door, and I bet you that nearly everybody in here knows what's up with this Apple logo short boot loop, often caused by flood illuminator damage, right? How many of you guys have seen this walk into your shop? It's an iPhone 10, guy comes in and it's Apple logo, goes dark, Apple logo goes dark. And what is it that you do if that person said, yes, there's important data? What do? How do you fix that?
Take off the speaker.
Take off the speaker. Why do you say take off the speaker? What's that gonna do? How is taking off a speaker gonna make some dude's iPhone 10 turn back on? Well, in order to understand why, now I think understanding why is super important, and that's why we started offering our training class. In 2015, we've been training people for every single month since then, and I think understanding why is so important. And I know a lot of you guys, how many of you guys understand why simply disconnecting that ear speaker flex makes those phones turn on? How many know why? Why?
There's water damage corroded on top there, usually.
What's it corroding?
The
Huh?
connection.
The connection of what? The flood illuminator. Why does that make the phone boot loop?
System check.
Talking to the CPU. You got it. So let's look at this. This is a picture that we give everybody on day one at Practical Board Repair School. It looks overwhelming, but that's okay. It's actually pretty straightforward. If we take the phone, we can divide it into 3 sections. One in black, power, right? Everybody loves power. That's where your short circuits and easy problems are. Power system of the phone. Over here in red is RF signaling, baseband. So that's an entire chapter all by itself. And then in green, this is the brain of the phone. So not every problem is a short circuit, right? Brain problems in this green area are why those iPhones show that Apple logo loop, Apple logo loop. There's nothing wrong with power. There's nothing wrong with RF in those phones. There's a problem in here. So we've got the NAND, right, the hard drive of the phone, and we got the processor, the CPU, or the application processor, AP CPU. These guys got to talk to each other in order to load the information to get that phone to boot up. And the way the NAND and the CPU talk to each other is through some CB radios they have called I2C. So there's all these CPU outputs, I2C lines, that go out like an intercom to many chips. So the CPU sits in the principal's office and it says like, all right, we're gonna boot up the phone. All right, I need you guys to start loading your startup programs. You guys as well, you guys take a break. All right, now you rest, now you go, right? So the CPU is the big organizer and it communicates to all those chips on an intercom called I2C. Now, if that I2C communication gets disrupted, then the CPU is going, so that's a problem, and that's going to show up as Apple logo. We don't know what to do. Go dark and start over. So how is it that everybody's walking in the shop with these iPhone 10s that just, 10s, 11 Pro, goes all the way up to 12, that suddenly can't load because of exactly what you said? You get a drop of water in that ear speaker and it goes under there and it corrodes two important things together. Now we know that this can be solved by just disconnecting that front flex, but what is that front flex plugged into? Well, here's a board view. This is an iPhone 10, and we know, what's the one that you unplug? Is it that? I think it's that one.
I think so.
Oh, this is an 11, the 11 Pro.
This is 11 Pro.
Yeah. So we'll unplug the one up there, J4300, and miraculously the phone comes on because we've divorced that little corroded spot from the board by unplugging that flex. Now let's drill down a little bit further. So if we drill down on this to see what's the actual circuitry in there, there's a lot of different microphone, button up, button down lines. But here's an important one. What do you see here? I2C. I2C, always on processor clock. I2C. So now, you tell me, how does a drop of corrosion out in the flood illuminator cause the phone to boot loop? What happens to that I2C line? It gets corroded to something else through the water damage, which makes the CPU's instructions on that line. It's the same as if you had a CB radio and somebody's pushing the button and nobody can hear, right? Yep.
Quick question. Is it always ward damage? Because the customer always says it's never ward damage. Is it definitely the ward damage causing this issue? Because they swear that something got wet.
Well, of course they're going to swear because they're unaware, and I do think that's really important. They swear that that's not true because they're unaware of it. So if I take my 11 Pro, and this morning I took my phone and I stuck it in my bralette. I mean, you guys don't all have one of those, but it's super useful. Check it out. Go for the run. There you go. Right, and then I went out to go. Right. Now, it is entirely possible that a single drop of sweat went in that ear speaker. And when I get back from my run, did this phone get wet? No. What's wrong with you? Of course it didn't get wet. I know my phone got wet, it didn't get wet, right? They're unaware, right? So how do you make them aware? Well, one thing that I would recommend is if you're doing data recovery, if you're doing microsoldering, you're gonna have a microscope, you're gonna have a camera, and you're gonna say, come on back, let's take a look. There's a really common problem here. And then you're gonna pull that apart and you can show them. And then they'll go, oh, wow. Don't worry, I can solve this problem for you, right? So
it is water, right? That we can know it's water. It's not dropping it or moving it around or the purse or the pocket.
Well, now you're asking a science question, right? And the answer to that is, in my experience, I have seen hundreds of these cases, and I have never found one that did not have corrosion at the flood illuminator in the very top corner.
Okay.
So, is it always water damage? I don't know. But in my experience, that's that's a super common fault, right? And when this started happening, this problem started happening at the beginning of COVID. Do you know why? It happened a lot with nurses. It was, we had multiple local nurses coming freaked out because they had this problem. And it was always the same history. I took a Clorox wipe. Clorox, is it alcohol? Does it evaporate? No, it's bleach, which is water, and if you go like this on your phone, what happens to the water in the ear speaker? You're pushing a drop of water down there, and that would corrode under there. It's just a weak spot in the phone. And there's weak spots in all of these phones. You just have to know where they are. All right, so I wanted you guys just to understand while you're here, learn a little something you didn't already know. The reason why we see that Apple logo boot loop so commonly in these phones that just walk in. You open them up, you'll see that drop of corrosion under the flood illuminator. How do you fix it? You have a couple of different options. If you don't micro solder, you can order them a self-service Apple OEM screen now. Then it will come with a brand new flood illuminator, and you can program that to the device through Apple self-service. If they're willing to pay for that, you can offer that for iPhone 12 and 13, maybe 11, I don't remember. And then what if you can't? What if you're not doing that? Then you can take that flood illuminator off, you can desolder the flood illuminator, clean it up, reball it, put it back on, and it will cure that problem almost all the time. And if it doesn't, because the flex is so damaged, you can take that flood illuminator off, put it in your pocket, take the flex, get a fresh one, and then solder it onto a new flex, and then install that, and the phone will work just fine, and you'll be able to preserve Face ID. And that's one of the common repairs that we teach at Practical Repair School this year. All right, solution to that problem, just to get data, is so easy, right? If you ask that first question, is there important data on the phone? Oh yeah, that's why I'm here. Here you go. Oh my God, this is amazing. You know, you'd be surprised if you ask that question. And people are willing to pay, whatever you want to charge them, right? If somebody walks in, it's a family, you can disconnect their ear speaker just for the purpose of data recovery, pull all of that data, put it into a backup, put it on a new phone for them, put it onto your computer, parse out the photos, parse out the contacts and messages, put that on a drive. You can help solve their problem of getting the information out of the phone as a service and charge whatever makes sense in your region. But usually it's more than if you were to fix the phone. All right, then let's talk about, well, if the ear speaker, who would have ever thought that, could corrupt the data on the phone and make it not boot up? Why don't we just disconnect everything? So you used to be able to do that, but not anymore. So we can't disconnect all the things because there's certain things that are now required. How many of you guys have seen this second common problem, which is you have an iPhone that turns on and you go to back it up, but it can't stay on. It'll stay on about 3 minutes and it'll click off. How many of you guys have seen that? Yeah, everybody, super common problem. And most of you guys recognize that can be, that's almost always a parts problem. What kind of parts cause that problem? Battery, the charge port, and in some devices, the power button flex. So parts plugged into the phone actually cause this boot loop. So what's up with that? So what's the heart? What's the reason why? So who can tell me the why? Why does a bad charge port make the phone only stay on for 3 minutes?
CPU again, information.
Information. Yeah, so let's dig in. All right, so what happens is the phone will boot up and the CPU in the green section is going to require information. It's going to require feedback from things that it really cares about. And the CPU really cares about one thing across the board. The CPU does not ever want to catch on fire. So it cares more than anything else. It cares about temperature. So the CPU in the old days used to pay attention to the temperature of what? What's the most important thing to regulate for temperature in that whole phone? The battery. That battery better not catch on fire, so it has been set up since the iPhone 5S for the CPU to say, hey battery, are you on fire? Hey battery, are you on fire? No? Okay, good. Every minute, that battery has to check in and say, I'm good, I'm chill, I'm not on fire, right? And if there's damage in the connection between the battery data, you know that little chip in the battery data, and it suddenly can't respond, or let's say you press it into the connector and you damage the little battery data pin, but everything else is fine, that battery will still turn the phone on, but it can't check in with that thermal monitor. And what happens? The phone will crash. And it takes about 3 minutes for the CPU to ask, hello, battery, I'm not hearing it. Are you on fire? Are you on fire? One more chance, are you on fire? He's on fire! Crash! Immediately abort, right? Turn the phone off. And that will continue on. So you can read those crash logs. And everybody should know how to do this. So in the phone, you can go to settings and you can find the panic logs and you can read them. You can also use 3U tools to read those logs. And there's some other, there was a third-party software, iDevice Analyzer, that would read those logs for you and help you figure out what's the missing sensor. Because it's not just the battery anymore. That was the iPhone 5S. Now, Apple started adding more and more and more temperature sensors that all have to report back to the CPU. So where's those other ones? iPhone XS, charge port. iPhone 11, charge port, and the power button. That little tiny power button has a little thermal sensor on it. And all of those have to report in. Here's an example of what one of those crash logs looks like if you find it. So there's a whole bunch of Sanskrit, maybe. And then, oh look, here we go. Watchdog timeout. No successful check-ins from thermal monitor. Missing sensor is mic 2. And you can look it up and say, what the heck is mic 2? They'll tell you. Oh, mic 2. Somebody out has figured that out. Somewhere on the internet, you just Google, what's mic 2? Mic 2 is the PowerFlex. Are you serious? The PowerFlex is called mic 2? Yes, that is true. Okay. So then you would know in your phone, your reboot is caused by that PowerFlex. We had one, I think I did a video on it on iPadRehab YouTube channel, where the guy was doing like a back glass and the laser nicked the PowerFlex. Fine, so he saw that, so he replaced it. But when he was putting it in, his tweezers made a tiny dimple in the flex and cracked the one little wire that was going out to that thermal sensor. So then he couldn't figure out why he still had this 3-minute reboot loop, solved by reading the logs and then getting him a undimpled PowerFlex. All right, so there's required thermal sensors. There's more of them now than when I made this talk like in May, and there's more of them now. So if you look in those logs and you see TG0V, that means it can't hear the battery thermal sensor. Mic 1, charge port, or PRS0, and mic 2, power button flex. And since then, I made another video fairly recently about the 12 Pro Max fake temperature sensor warning. Have you seen that? It's a little less common, so you may not have seen that. But you'll have an iPhone 12 Pro Max that boots up and it says, temperature too hot, must cool down before you can use me.
I saw that.
Yeah? You've seen it?
Yeah, but I split the board and
Yeah.
put it back. It says temperature's too low or too high, something. It's not boot up. It's boot up actually, but you cannot do anything.
Right.
So after that, I split it again, put it back again, it's worked.
Was it missing any pads when you split it?
No.
Okay. So what Rushtu is saying, by the way, 3rd place in yesterday's microsoldering championship. Congratulations, Rushtu. And Practical Board Repair School graduate. So the iPhone 12 Pro Max is a little bit of an aside from the slides, has another one. That weird thing where the phone boots up and it says, too hot, you can't use me. And you're like, too hot? Not hot at all. You're full of crap. Then, what are you gonna do? Back to rule number 1. You don't have a board problem. until you prove that you don't have a parts problem, right? Same thing we just talked about. You always have to have known good parts. So I started just doing a process of elimination, which is, well, let me take the board out, and can you boot here on my desk with a charge port and a screen and plugged into something I use all the time, the DC power supply. Yeah, I'm gonna disconnect this one. DC power supply. And it showed me that the phone was normally booting, and then it got to the end of the boot up sequence and it showed me that temperature warning, but it wasn't hot at all. Thermal camera is not hot. So I said, let me eliminate even more variables. What happens if I take the charge port off? How can I boot a logic board just on my desk with just the DC power and nothing else attached to it? You know, get some tweezers and figure out, what does the power button do? It shorts these 2 pins to ground, short them to ground with the tweezers, and then the phone starts to turn on, and it doesn't have that temperature warning anymore. It booted up. It must be the charge port, it must be bad charge port. Get on another charge port. If the charge port is plugged in while it's booting up, it goes to the temperature warning. If the charge port is disconnected, it will not. Even if you disconnect it while it's booting up, it will not show you that temperature warning. But the phone would only stay on for 3 minutes. Because why? It needs to hear a temperature sensor from that charge port in order to stay on. But when the charge port's plugged in, it gave you that temperature warning. So that seems like a circle. So on mine, I split the board. What does that mean? That means take the double-sided logic board. Right, here's our 12 Pro that we're going to be fixing later. And you have to get it, it's like an Oreo cookie. How do we get it into the 2 pieces? Separate it. How do we do that? We have to desolder that, and there's a cute little tool that's made for this job. And this is all kinds of stuff that we sell, all the microsoldering supplies at iPadRehab.com on supply store, on our Shopify store there. This guy, the Sunshine Preheater, will heat up and desolder those 2 logic boards so that you can pull them apart, which again eliminates variables. So on the 12 Pro Max that I was fixing that day, split it apart, and when I looked at the board under the microscope, I could see that we were missing just a few pads. What does that mean? That means something had happened to that phone. Typically it got run over by a car or a really hard drop. That the little connections between the top board and the bottom board were already broken from whatever had happened to that phone. When I desoldered the logic board, I could see the broken spots. Normally there's like dozens that are broken, and so it's a big problem. Data recovery only. But sometimes there's just a few broken spots. And in this case, I looked them up, and I found that the broken spots corresponded to some line called something NTC. What does NTC mean? What do you think it has to do with? Answer? Temperature. You got it. Here's Tony Tone, finalist in the microsoldering competition yesterday. You guys may remember. Yeah. Long time YouTube watcher. Yeah. All right. So you got it. Temperature. So because there was a severed temperature line, the iPhone 12 Pro Max was not able to hear the temperature sensor that was on the charge port. And so it just thought, oh, I can't hear the charge port, but over here I get my reading, so that must mean the charge port's on fire, so this phone's too hot. And then it shows that warning, right? All right, so it's just another example of a signature problem in today's phones that you guys should all be aware of. How do you fix that? You have to repair that connection so that the bottom board and the top board can hear each other. All right, so this is the next slide is talking about another signature problem that's in the same category of problems that you guys should be aware of on today's phones. So here's one, when somebody comes in typically with an iPhone 10 or a 10s with a hard drop or it got run over, they severed layers between the sandwich board. Right, so here's a picture of what we were just talking about. This is an iPhone 10, and see how the top board is pictured down here? Normally it's soldered on top of that bottom board that's up there. And what are all these little dots? Each one of them is an electrical connection between the top board and the bottom board. These little tiny pads are the weak point between these two boards, and they'll just break off, like we were just talking about. Now, in an iPhone 10, there's a symptom that goes along with this problem. That's the first symptom people are going to notice. So, what do you think might happen if we were to sever a connection along here?
Touching.
Down here, these connections are for things like Wi-Fi, which they will ultimately notice, bottom speaker, which they will ultimately notice. But the first thing that they're going to notice is that some of these connections, a lot of them actually, are for touch screen function. So the presentation that you'll see is somebody walks in, run over iPhone. Is there important data on this phone? Yes, that's why I'm here. All right, let's see. Put a new screen on it, no touch. Try another screen, no touch. For an iPhone 10, that's a classic presentation of you have what we call catastrophic split board damage, where you have torn the pads between the two layers. So what's the solution to that? Split the board, desolder the two halves, and then if the break is on the top board where the data is, here's your CPU and the NAND is on the other side, this is your data board. That one's got to work. So if your problem is on here, you have to fix it. How do we fix these little circles that are all ripped off? There's just a picture if you guys haven't had a chance to see a desoldered iPhone 10 logic board. iPhone 10 split into half. These guys, this is our fix. These things are a relatively new thing that China made in the last year or so. Anybody know what these are? Yeah, these are stickers, copper stickers. And see how there are these little circles? They are replacement pads. So you can take off one of these little copper stickers, put a little solder on both sides of it, and then go to the sore spot where you're missing the pad, and you're gonna see the nub of the trace, like a lily pad stem where the lily pad's been ripped off. You can see the little neck. So you take your soldering iron, put a little solder on that, and take the copper. We call those solder lugs, just because that's what China called them. That was funny. Solder lug, and you fix that pad. Now, let's say that somebody had walked in. Is there important data on this phone? Yes, that's why I'm here. No touch iPhone 10. Ugh, you got catastrophic board damage. Split the board. Now we've got the top half of the board, and we do that solder lug repair. The next thing to do is to get their data rather than continue on to fix the phone. So how do we get their data when we fix that top board and how do we use this thing to get the data out? All right, so without having to fix the bottom board, you can get the data from just the top board. So I'm going to say that again. You fix the top board, the bottom board is all chewed up, dog pissed on it, went through a lawnmower. You know what? I don't need the bottom board. The bottom board is just the red category, RF stuff. Take this guy's bottom board, put it over there. I'm going to take the fixed top board and I'm going to combine it with a known good bottom board that I already have sitting around. It belongs to somebody else. I can take the data from the customer, the top board, and I can combine it with somebody else's bottom board that I keep for this purpose. Put it together in something called the eye socket. The eye socket looks like this. You can come down to the booth and see one. where it's a little pressure tool that uses pogo pins to clamp together that fixed top board together with somebody else's bottom board. And that phone will boot up, enter the passcode, recover the data, and then transfer that to a new phone for them or extract out the data to USB and give it to them on a drive. Once you get the data, then you can choose, maybe you want to fix the bottom board, right? So you can take their bottom board and either repair it or transfer the unique chips from their bottom board to a perfectly good, never been run over bottom board. And then you can put it back together, solder it back together with their top board, and it'll be a working phone again. And here's just a picture for the forensics guys that shows this phone working on Celebrite. None of those guys realized that they could get a Celebrite extraction just from the phone in the eye socket. They've never even heard of any of that stuff. So that's their picture. All right, so in order to be able to do stuff like that, you need to have a microsoldering setup, or at least know somebody who does. So what does it take to microsolder? I think that the easy thing is to say, I don't microsolder, right? So if you want to fix boards like this, don't bother learning to microsolder, and instead, just send them to somebody who does. So we do mail-in data recovery for folks from all over the world, like our buddy here, Michael's from Seattle, Washington. So if you ever get a case where somebody's really, really desperate, they're in tears and it's super important to them, then you can just refer them to our mail-in data recovery service or your local person or whoever it is that you trust. And you can even do that under your own name. So you can simply upcharge them whatever makes sense for you, and then mail in the phone on their behalf to us, and they'll never even know. So that's sort of the easy way to do microsoldering. But if you want to do it yourself, yeah.
What's the average cost if we B2B and I have a customer? What do you guys charge us to do a standard job?
So the answer to that is we do flat rate by the model. So if you have an iPhone 6, that's a single flat board. That's going to be pretty straightforward given the breadth of experience with today's iPhone 6. You're going to know, we're going to know exactly what's wrong with it just from experience. So those are $300 data recoveries. And then it goes all the way up. When we start getting into the ones that there's two boards and you have to desolder them and use more expensive tools, like the eye socket. The eye socket itself is like 150 or 200 bucks per model. So then those become like $450 data recoveries. And then I think the most current phone is $500 or $600 because of the lack of experience, where everything's a big open-ended research project and it takes a long time. But we don't charge by time or labor. So we may work on an iPhone 13 Pro Max with some weird problem like I just described with that temperature sensor thing. That may take us weeks to months to ultimately figure out, and you still pay that same flat rate price.
There's no charge to fix it?
Right, yep. So there's no fix, no fee, and we will recycle it for you, or you can ask us to send it back, and then we will charge you shipping to return it if you want it back. So that's how we operate. And you can come talk to us over at the booth. So folks either upcharge their customers and they send it in, or if they just don't want to deal with the hassle of it, they just give them a referral. And then I saw one shop get a 5-star review once. And the 5-star review for the shop said, I am so glad for this shop to be here because they're the ones that told me that I could send my phone to iPadRehab and get my data recovered. I didn't get a 5-star review from that guy. I got like no reviews. But that shop did, just for giving them the path to success, and now they have a customer for life because they think, they just referred them to the specialist, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I just want to say that when I was first starting out, you saved me probably $1 million because I was spreading a lawsuit for a phone that we were responsible for breaking that had all of the business information on it.
Well, that's great. I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me that. And that's not something that I thought about. That we do see a lot of shops that are like, you gotta get me out of this. I mean, not work. And that is another aspect of data recovery. Yep.
What's average turnaround time?
These are all really booth questions, but while we're here, the average turnaround time, we try very hard to balance our research and engineering costs, because we're constantly doing research. I'm a PhD researcher by training, and so I love research, and so we're doing a lot of that, but at the same time, we're trying to keep costs to be more. Our main customers are families, more like a speeding ticket rather than a whole vacation, so that they're not just like, screw it, we'll just go back to Florida and take a whole other trip, because we can't afford to recover our data. We started a rush fee, so you can pay rush and I'll look at it right away. And so you'll get an answer really quick if you want to do paid rush. For our business-to-business customers, we have another slot called priority data. So if you're B2B, you automatically go in priority data. So depending on the time of year, sometimes rush plus priority data kind of can be a wait. So you can always pay rush to get us to look at it immediately. And then if you want to go keep it as affordable as possible, it goes sort of in the regular queue. And that's going to be where it's going to be, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. Let's move on a little bit. I'll tell you what, though, it's super fun to learn how to microsolder, because there's nothing more fun than going to give a talk at a conference and have a guy tell you, you saved me $1 million because you recovered data from a phone that guy was going to come break my kneecaps, and that's an expensive reconstruction. Right? And so when you are recovering people's data, it's extremely rewarding just across all of phone repair. It's the best. Everybody knows that. So what does it take for you to start doing this stuff yourself? So you gotta get some equipment and supplies. So we've started on our website under the supply side. I made a collection called The Perfect Start. That's sort of all the stuff that you can kind of see. This is what you really need. And then there is specialty tools. And if I want to do that split board stuff, I need to invest in all the stuff I need to split, reball, iPhone 10s, and eye sockets and things like that to recover data. So there's the specialty tools collection. And you can take a look at that. That stuff is going to be in the $2,000 to $4,000 range. And then training. Our training is a 5-day course that we've been doing since 2015. That's longer than anybody else, continuously. I am a teacher by trade. I used to teach general biology to 200 people every day, and I absolutely love teaching. I love teaching more than data recovery. So Practical Board Repair School is 5 days plus. I highly recommend the optional weekend. And that cost is $2,100 plus the weekend, and that will really set you up to be able to go back home and watch all those videos and be like, yup, You can understand the videos. You can do those Lewis videos that are just like, you can be like, yup, and then he's gonna do that. Oh, and he got his shorts. That's why he's going there, and that's why, yup, I got it. You'll be able to follow along and practice and know what it feels like to have success, because you will absolutely, while you're under my care, be able to do the challenge that we did yesterday, would be typical in the course, and taking apart one of these split boards, reballing it back together is something that we cover now. That Face ID stuff is something that we cover now as well. All right, so check that out at iPadRehab.com. Click on training and supply. Also, while you come to our booth, this is really cool. Pick up your cheat sheet. Everybody loves this thing. We had this hanging up in our shop in 2 places. One for the intake person. This guy says he's got an iPhone 11, but it has 3 cameras. So you can use this little poster to identify your phone. So we made it a game. You can come play it down at our booth and see who's the leader out of everybody at this convention to take a big dump of 15 or 20 different phones and as fast as you can, sort them out from the 5S all the way up to the 13 Pro Max using this chart. And you can pick up one of those charts to take home, and if we're out, you can send us your name and we'll mail you one, because it's super, super nice. All right, I think that the rest of this talk is describing the ultimate problem here on Michael's phone, which is that he has a short to ground, a short circuit. This is the low-hanging fruit problem, everybody's favorite problem, because you can find and solve a short to ground using this tool, the iPadRehab Short Killer, available at Michael's and Joanne Fabrics and Crafts, and iPadRehab Supply. So this Short Killer has fixed more phones for more people better than pretty much any other tool in the shop. So we're gonna show you how to fix Michael's phone here. And I think that I'm gonna respect my time limit here and draw a line. And I'm gonna head back to the booth, and I think we'll just do a demo of how to fix Michael's phone. That'll be kind of short. And you guys can come and stop by our booth and check that out, okay? Because I think it would take too long. All right, so we'll just go skip here to the last slide. Yep. There we go. All right, so thanks for your attention, and if you have any questions about data recovery, mail-in repair, mail-in data recovery, supplies, microsoldering training, come down and visit us, and while you're there, play Identify and pick up your cheat sheet. All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jessica.